negative comments that usually come in terms of just being very critical about what you're doing. But I remember you being extremely kind. You're one of the reasons that I kept going. You're one of the reasons that I felt that even though my idea may have sounded stupid at that time, you still encouraged me to continue doing what I do.
Most people want to buy products that already have dozens or hundreds of 5-star Amazon reviews, and there's that small percentage that's an early adopter that want to try something before anybody else does. Why would somebody trust somebody new telling them they can solve all their problems? And the fact that you got them, you went into the store in the first place, you had the confidence that a lot of other founders they would have said, oh, I'm going to build something and then try to see if it sticks. But you said, I need to talk to people, figure out what the problems really are, and then figure out how we can help.
A few years ago, Clubhouse was pretty big. People seem to spend a lot of time over there. So I entered a Clubhouse where you are allowed to pitch your business. There must have been around 1,000 people in the Clubhouse, and every founder got, I think, a minute to pitch, and they got feedback from the few of the panelists as well. So I did the same pitch that I did, but after my pitch ended, it was crickets for like 15 seconds, and the feeling that my heart was sinking, like, did I do that bad? Where in a room of 1,000 people, nobody had anything to say, probably because they didn't understand what the hell I was talking about. It felt terrible, and probably one of my lowest points in my startup life. One good thing that the advent of AI and AGI have brought in is the ability to process vast amounts of data, because earlier we still collected a vast amount of data, but there were limitations on how fast we could process them, how effectively we could store them, and how easily we could convert them into actionable insights.
The worst thing an investor, from the investor's point of view, is hearing everything is going great and then suddenly a startup fails. The scenario where you're getting updates and you're seeing, hey, these aren't the things that aren't working. There's risk in every venture, but if founders are transparent of this isn't working, we're testing, we're keep trying things, we need help, that's where investors can also come in and help support.
All right. Thank you so much, Jason, for joining us today. It's a real pleasure to have you. We had previously decided that we could record a conversation and then probably release it later on. But I think this is a much better version of it, because then people can see us live. And plus, Jason, you're so famous and so popular that I think a lot of people would wish to interact with you in some way. So I figured this would be a great opportunity for us to do that. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate everything you do for the startup community, and I'm excited to bring different audiences here. So we shared with our Startup Grind Boston community and network, Prepare for VC, Boston New Tech, and glad to have the Xena Intelligence following and family on board as well.
Yep. And just in the way of introduction, Jason has been one of my strongest and certainly the longest time in terms of a person who's a mentor and who's now become a friend. He's exceptionally kind, as you can see. He's extremely authentic and truly and genuinely wishes to help startups and the startup community in Boston, but across the country as well. I still remember the first time I met Jason. I was still in Babson, and I knew Jason as this legend at that time. And I reached out to him when I was in college, and I said, Jason, listen, I'm Akhil. I'm a student at Babson. I would love to speak with you. And I never expected a response from you, but then you were kind enough to say that, hey, Akhil, so glad to meet you. Please feel free to come. And so at that time, Xena was just a pretty early stage idea. I didn't even know if things would work out. But then you were kind enough to invite me to your then office space in downtown Boston. And I was so scared and nervous to come and meet you, because in the early stages of building a startup, you are very nervous about sharing your thoughts out loud, thinking of what others would think, really scared about any negative feedback or thoughts that might be forthcoming that will really make you feel bad. And so with that fear in mind, I came to meet you. I still remember I was shivering and I was like, hey, Jason, so nice to meet you. you were part of all these great communities, and I shared, hey, listen, Jason, I'm working on this idea, I'm working with e-commerce brands, I would really love to see it grow. And I was fully expecting a rebuke, fully expecting the barrage of negative comments that usually come in terms of just being very critical about what you're doing. But I remember you being extremely kind to me at that time, and actually it would be fair to say that you're one of the reasons that I kept going. You're one of the reasons that I felt that even though my idea may have sounded stupid at that time, you still encouraged me to continue doing what I do. So for that, Jason, I really like to thank you for that.
It's been amazing being part of the story, and from that first connection while you're at Babson, and being because you've always what you wanted to build this as a company and brand, but really, I think even more important to you, and one of the things I really resonated with is that you're building it for all the entrepreneurs that you're able to help, and so it's been amazing, kind of seeing that origin of these were individual clients at the time, and you were working one-on-one, getting to hear the story of different brands you were connecting with and supporting, and then building this platform out of it that came from those early days, and kind of being able to see that growth and trajectory. And now you know yeah, now being able to see all the reports and the way you're able to, like, you become a thought leader in the e-commerce industry, and have all these Xena Intelligence reports and everything else you're giving back to the community. And so it's been really rewarding from our side. Every time I get to see an exciting update from you, or a note that you've raised some more capital, or you brought on new clients and partners, or even the branding and the website, and everything kind of really showcasing the power of Xena Intelligence to the community. So I've been really grateful to be part of that story. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to catch up and share your story with the network here too, is basically a lot of times founders, a lot of the companies we've worked with at Prepare for VC, or are part of our startup grind in Boston new tech community, they're coming from personal experiences the founders have had. They're coming from ideas, even services, consulting opportunities you've started. And there's an idea of, how do we scale this, how do we turn it into a full-fledged startup and business, and making that leap can be really difficult. I know you titled this chat, why startups are really hard. So looking forward to kind of diving into that story here with you on how did you meet your first customers? How did you even figure out, like, this is something we're going to start with, and see that big vision, or of where you wanted to turn it into to help more and more people?
Yeah, would love to. And I think one thing that is common between the both of us is the fact that we get to talk to a lot of founders across different stages, either in terms of networking or mentoring them. And so we get a lot of the thought that we get in terms of what makes a successful startup, or rather a successful founder. And I just wanted to share some of that as well. So in terms of Xena, in the very beginning, just before speaking to you, when I had this idea that, hey, listen, I wanted to help small businesses grow. At that time, small businesses grow. So I thought, since I was an immigrant, I didn't know anyone in this country. I was pretty sure, like, why on earth would anyone help me? Why would anyone trust me? And least of all, why would anyone pay me for anything? And so this thought always there, and to an extent, that imposter syndrome would remain. So in the initial phases, what I did was, I used to spend a huge amount of time manually reaching out to people, especially on LinkedIn, through emails, through other outreach services that are present, and kind of spend a huge amount of, like, insane amount of time copy pasting emails, typing out, seeing the responses, setting up meetings. And at that time, like I said, I had very little money. I didn't have a car, so meeting people in person was very hard, and at that time Zoom was not a big not a preferred mode of meeting with people. But despite that, I still met, I remember I must have met thousands and thousands of people, sharing my idea, reiterating it again and again, and having received feedback that I didn't know what to do with. And there have been many, many, many occasions where I thought, okay, this is just not worth it. I may as well return to India or try to find a job, or try to do something else, because it seems like even after speaking to hundreds of people, nothing seems to come about of it. There's no solid actionable insights. And so when I was just about to give up, I met you and I thought, okay, maybe I'll give it some more shot. And then I remember I was walking in Wellesley Square near Babson, and then I decided, I have nothing to lose. I'm at the rock bottom right now. I entered a store, and I introduced myself. Hey, I'm Akhil. I'm a student at Babson. I'm really passionate about e-commerce. I don't know what your guys' situation is, but I would love to help you grow that business. And for my surprise, they said, yes, that sounds like a really good idea. What do you have in mind? I didn't have anything in mind. I was just like talking to him, and I said, I could help out, I could help set it up. And I didn't know the 101 principles of sales. I didn't know the 5 stages of deal analysis. Like, I didn't know anything. And they said, okay, how much do you charge? And that was another shocker for me, because I didn't know what to say. Like, I have no idea what I'm supposed to charge in this. And I probably must have told them that, don't worry about paying, I'll just work for a couple of months and see how it is, and take it from there. And so that is the reason, that first customer, they're still my customers till date, London Harness and To Me Wellesley. They are the first people who trusted me, and they are the reason I got enough motivation to keep doing and keep getting more customers. So I think, if you look at a whole stretch, like if you have a timeline from zero to first customer, you see like 99.9% of it rejection, and then 0.1% which sparked the rest of the journey. And it would not be surprising if people tend to give up before the 0.1% stuck. I don't know if this is something you have seen, with the other founders as well, and like what your experience has been as well.
Definitely. Yeah. The first of anything is always really hard. And, people, if you look at, or I'll use the Amazon example because, you're helping a lot of e-commerce companies. Um, there's most people want to buy products that already have dozens or hundreds of 5-star Amazon reviews. And there's that early, small percentage that's an early adopter that want to try something before anybody else does. And, those are the people you were walking into stores and, found the right person that said, hey, I know we're getting started. I do need help. You're the person that can help me. And so, I mean, the biggest thing, and this is what we kind of emphasize as the like 3 core components of every pitch and prepare for VC, whether it's an actual pitch or just having conversation, is creating that sense of trust, anticipation, and joy. So the trust piece you mentioned is, why would somebody trust somebody new telling them they can solve all their problems? And the fact that you got them, you went into the store in the first place, like you had the confidence that a lot of other founders just they would have said, oh, I'm going to build something and then try to see if it sticks. But you said, I need to talk to people, figure out what the problems really are, and then figure out how we can help. That's the first piece. The fact that, you went in, you wanted to hear and listen to them and, learn from each of the customers and build that relationship there. And you said, I'm going to get started. We'll see if you find value in this. We'll move forward from there. If you don't, you know, we got to know each other. And so kind of building it as a relationship is also a very underrated skill set that every entrepreneur should adapt and see. Basically, at the beginning, you are in the testing phase, um, and then even later on, making sure these are still relationships. These are not just another number on your sales pipeline. These are actual people that are making decisions, whether it's a business or an individual. There's still a person at that business that you're interacting with and dealing with, and wants to feel special and like your business cares about them as well. So yeah, the more you can kind of build those relationships, have people be curious and excited to see how you can actually help and support them, and want to see that journey together as a true partner. The better off you're going to be. And it's really hard to find that first person, but once you have that success story and case study, it makes that second and third a lot easier.
And for those who don't know, Jason, you are also a published author. Venture Forward, fantastic read. The best part that I love about your book is that that you've mentioned a lot of stories of actual people going through their own journey, and there are a few core principles that come out when you read the book. The first thing, or rather the most prominent one for me that came out, was your emphasis on people first focus. People are not just in your founding team, not just in your team, not just in your customers, but that aspect of it probably gets missed out in your journey of being an entrepreneur, where initially the focus is raising funds, building a product, getting a customer, signing contracts. But just having that mindset of people first, I think, is super important, super crucial, because it's people who decide to become your customers. It's people who decide to take ahead your vision. And so, like, that's one thing I really love about your book, and I would love to hear your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything you're building, even if it's applying for a job. I mean, personally, everything I've either started or applied for, I've gotten all of my successful opportunities through networking. And it's more like linked put a lot of emphasis on the LinkedIn network, and building connections. Like, anytime I'm applying for something, it's always, who can I connect with, how can I meet the people, learn from their experiences, and one way or another, have build that relationship. The same thing with fundraising. It's always, if it's a blanket email that investors see is going out to every other investor in your network, and you're doing the spray and pray model, that doesn't work and stick, because um, they know that's going out to everyone. And so the more you can say, hey, look, I'm reaching out to you because you have this company in your portfolio. It seems like you're an expert in this industry. Or I went to this talk you gave and, learned a lot from you and got really excited about what you can give as a value add investor. Each of those, the more you can personalize it and make it a warmer lead or warmer connection, the better experience everybody's going to have. And then, your downside is you have a really good first conversation, it doesn't lead anywhere. The upside is you have a great long term relationship, and both sides have a win win situation you developed. So, um, yeah, on the people, the people they're your customers, they're your investors, they're your partners, they're your team members, and yeah, it's really important to kind of have that mindset anytime, anywhere you're building.
Very, very well said. And the second principle that comes out of your book is the aspect of having diverse paths to success. Not everyone's journey is the same. In fact, they vary widely. And one thing that people, when they think about startups, is that it's very easy to find 10 reasons why you shouldn't pursue something of your own. It could come in the form of uncertainty, risk of losing money, risk of losing your quote unquote reputation, risk of thinking that people will think that you're stupid or incapable, risk of losing your job if you may have a 9 to 5. And it's not hard to find reasons. Maybe they think that they're too old or they're too young. Maybe they think they'll never find customers. Maybe they think they themselves are not capable enough to be a founder. So it's not really hard, and it's amplified by the fact that people tend to compare themselves with others. Like, if you're a founder, even before you're a founder, you're like, oh, look at my classmate or schoolmate who was not as smart as me, or I thought was not as smart as me, but is doing so much better. And that's because he started early, or because he knew someone, or because he did something that I may not be able to do. And that comparison never really dies away. I know for a fact that a lot of founders think, oh, I my valuation is 15 million, how did that guy get a 30 million valuation at half the revenue that I have? Like, it makes no sense. And so it's easy to find reasons to get dejected. Is this something that you also see when you speak to founders or people who want to be founders? And if so, like, how do you advise them to overcome that?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it stems from that the success stories we hear are, um, are stories about companies being, unicorn ventures, like getting billion-dollar valuations with massive venture rounds. But that's not the only success metric for a founder, and that's a small percentage compared to all the stories that are probably more under the radar. And that was part of the emphasis of venture forward, is telling those other pathways and stories to success.
Mhm.
So I mean, even companies like MailChimp, for example, they didn't raise any outside financing until they were $1 billion venture. And that's a pathway. They said, we're going to just keep getting customers, use our revenue to fuel growth. And, this can be a business we operate for years without a, deadline from investors on when this needs to turn to an exit. There's other ventures that can be really successful for both the founders and the investors in a acquisition timeline. And they say, I don't need to be a business that raises $100 million. I can be a business that raises $2 or $3 million. And when we sell to somebody else for 50 to $100 million, everybody's really happy. And our business gets to be, everything we built gets to be part of a larger organization that can help this reach millions more people, and you get to see that vision carry on. And then, there's plenty of businesses that also say, look, like, scaling isn't the ultimate dream. It's being, I want to be my own boss. I want to create this as a venture I want to do for the next 20, 30 years and pass down to my children, and like have them run the business. And so I think the first thing, and this definitely changes along the way, but the first thing is really figuring out like what you ultimately want out of your startup, and making sure it aligns with anybody else you bring in. That's a co-founder. Like, if you bring on co-founders and team members, and one of you, wants to do this for 20 years and one of you wants to sell it in the next 2 years, that's a conflict there that the earlier you can solve that, the better. Same with investors, understanding what's their timeline, their scale, their horizon, and saying no if it's not a match with what you want out of your business too.
Yeah, very, very well said. And in your experience, have you seen or have you felt that when you speak to certain founders, you feel that, like, I wish I could convey the fact that, they shouldn't give up, or they should try just a little harder for maybe a little longer? Or do you feel that, when someone feels that they're not good enough, or someone feels that it's time for them to give up, that's valid and that's what they should do?
I think it depends on where they are in that personal journey. So if it's their, yeah, we actually talked about this in our Prepare for V's. Like, we kicked off a new breakthrough program cohort yesterday, and
Mhm.
talked about that journey of it's not a straight line upward, or even a curve upward. There's those valleys and troughs. And yeah, the startup J curve is a great read as well. So you go through ups and downs, and there's a peak where you're really excited, you think everything's going well. Then it might take some more time until you get that
Yeah.
next customer, or you might figure out, hey, there's a big leap from getting those early adopters on board to getting that second wave of customers that we need to try something different or pivot a little bit the way we're doing business. So if it's something where it definitely needs to take some more time and more work, and I think the founder is passionate enough to make that possible and has the skill set, I always want to encourage that. If it's a scenario where they feel like they've tried everything and it's time to move on, you know, there's plenty of cases where you're saving a lot of stress and anxiety, and there could be something that's a better fit for that founder startup fit needs to be there too. So there's definitely cases where it makes sense to stop your venture, try something else. But the main thing is encouraging founders that if they do if they are seeking, actionable advice and feedback, there's plenty of resources out there they can learn from. There's mentors, there's books, there's programs where you don't have to make all the mistakes yourself. You can learn from what worked and what hasn't worked for other people and make the startup journey a little bit easier. I'm not going to say it's easy, but it makes it easier, kind of learning from others and trying things out that have worked for other ventures, or avoiding things that are yeah are going to make your venture journey harder.
Nice. And one other principle that you mentioned. Who's that?
This is Milo.
Milo. Hey, Milo. I thought you had a dog too.
2 dogs and a cat.
Oh,
Rocket
sweet.
Rebel and Milo.
Yeah, I was saying another thing that you mentioned in your book was the importance of having a clear and simple messaging, being able to convey what you're working on in an easy to understand way. I remember early on I was building Xena, and Steve Wilkes, who is one of our mutual friends, also works in Prepare for VC. He invited me to a clubhouse room, and at that time, a few years ago, clubhouse was pretty big. People seem to spend a lot of time over there. So I entered a clubhouse where you are allowed to pitch your business. There must have been around 1,000 people in the clubhouse, and every founder got, I think, a minute to pitch, and they got feedback from the few of the panelists as well. So I went there. I was pretty confident because I've done this pitch that it's a visual of a story of a stick man going through a pain and then solving the issue through Xena. So I had like perfected it over time. I had won different pitch competitions, so I was very self confident that this pitch would like really do well wherever I say it. But one mistake I made, or I didn't realize, that since it was clubhouse, there was no visuals, there was no slides that I could show. But I thought that's fine. I mean, I speak well. I mean, people can hear. That should be enough. So I did the same pitch that I did, but after my pitch ended, it was crickets for like 15 seconds, and the feeling that my heart was sinking, like, did I do that bad? Where in a room of 1,000 people, nobody had anything to say, probably because they didn't understand what the hell I was talking about. It felt terrible, and it's probably one of my lowest points in my startup life. And it just shot my self-confidence, because people said after that they didn't understand what I was saying. Some said I was too fast, some said I was too slow, whatever the reason is. And it just devastated me for a few weeks. It took a while for me to recover. But that just went on to show that you're never really there. You have to keep adapting, keep putting yourself out there, and keep putting yourself in a position where you're vulnerable and open to feedback. And each and every feedback that you get, no matter how hard it is, no matter how embarrassing it is super important. And it is important to keep your pitch, your idea, as clear as possible. So this is one thing that I faced. And so whenever people say that I speak well, or whatever the situation is, I laugh on the inside, because I know I've been through all this, and it the feeling that you have is not pleasant at all. But one thing that I learned from Prepare for VC is the importance of keeping your pitch as simple as possible.
Yeah, and your pitch actually that you gave our demo day at the time during the program, that's still an example we
Sure.
give to all the startups in our program today, because you were able to paint that story of, hey, this is where we started. These are actual people. I think it was actually the story you told of people that, the people you walked into the store and became your
Mhm.
first customer, and then said, we helped everyone on an individual basis, turned that into a platform. We can help thousands or millions of people from here. And this is how we're doing it with the technology. And
Mhm.
that story really resonated with audiences. And I mean, you're right. Like, depending on the circumstance, you have to adapt if it's an audio pitch versus
Mhm.
a visual pitch versus just a one-on-one conversation you're having with somebody. But yeah, I think the more you can bring that story out like you did in your presentation,
Mhm.
the easier it is for people to say, like, I can really see the value here, what they were able to do, and why everybody that's going to be a future customer is going to really care about this and be excited to
Mhm.
finally have a solution.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. And it's one of those things where it seems very easy and obvious on the from the outside, but the reality is that it takes a lot of iteration, a lot of work into perfecting the pitch to make it as easy as possible. And
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, quick question for you is, what's changed along the way? I know when you started, or your first version of your platform, um, the AI space was nowhere near as advanced as it is right now.
mm-mm.
Um, has that made it easier? Has it made it harder? Like, what have you changed in the technology itself to attract new audiences?
Sure. I think one good thing that the advent of AI and AGI have brought in is the ability to process vast amounts of data. Because earlier we still collected a vast amount of data, but there were limitations on how fast we could process them, how fast, how effectively we could store them, and how easily we could convert them into actionable insights. But thanks to the latest developments and all these models in place, it has become easier for us to do that, easier for us to scale up, easier for us to add a layer in front of our database that makes it like super efficient and super helpful in terms of how we can deliver value. So the value for us is defined as the number of actions that our optimized, or rather our platform is able to take on an e-commerce platform, and that action could be changing listings, or optimizing SEO, or optimizing ad campaigns, or pulling competitor data. So all these actions, the faster you do it, the more often you do it, the better your result is, or the better you have the ability to deliver value. And so because of this advent of AI, it has become extremely easy for us to scale up and deliver even more value to what we do. So it's been great so far.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, excited to see, yeah, to hear all the stories. And
Mhm.
um, also, how did you, like, one of the things that was really impressive early on was, yeah, your interactive, like, the way you designed the brand and the website. And yeah, you always had a place that captured everybody's attention and was really responsive, and again, told that story without telling too much, that you know uh it was like key messages and points that people needed to know to draw you in and want to book something with you. So what was the process of figuring out what the brand should look like and what the feel of the organization should feel like?
Sure. One thing that I've learned is that as founders, or as someone who's building something, you kind of live and breathe what you're trying to build. And so many times expressing that concept outward becomes very tedious in terms of making it as simple as possible, because the a same concept can be described in different ways. So I'll give you an example. So Xena could be described as a ad optimization tool, which for me it would be incorrect, but for someone on the outside they could arguably make that case. Xena could be described as a competitor of Gartner or Kantar. Xena could be a data analytics platform for some, which could be accurate, but that's not the only thing it does. Xena could be described as a Amazon management platform, also true on paper, but that's it doesn't cover the whole site. So then, for as a founder who's trying to communicate, it becomes a challenge that whenever I try to describe what Xena does, I wish to cover all these points. Like, I wish to convey that it does optimization, it does ad insights, it does SEO, it even can do A/B testing on your pricing. So it can do all these things, and for me, all of them are important. For my customers, all of these are important. But when I'm describing it to someone, if I sit down and start explaining all these, it would never end. And study shows that a person's average attention span is, I think it was 15 seconds. So once you cross that, no matter what you say, it just does not matter. So then you're stuck in a situation where you have to choose, and it is a very difficult choice. So if I meet someone, should I say that, hey, I help e-commerce brands? That's fair. Or should I say, it is the best e-commerce management tool in the world? Also true. So then that's where I think the challenge comes for a lot of people. Best way to overcome that is to use people as sounding boards, speak to as many people as possible, and get feedback from them. So if I were to meet you for the first time, I would say, hey, we are the best e-commerce management tool in the world. Or I would say it's the best data insights tool for digital marketplaces in the world. So I can use any of these, but then it is on me to decide what I need to hone on. And it also depends on who I am speaking to. If I'm speaking to a customer, I would definitely stick to what I think would add most value to them. I wouldn't go to a small business and say that, hey, we are a better alternative to Kantar, because they don't care what a Kantar is, or maybe they know, but that's not where they find the most value. So I think that's one thing that a lot of people struggle in, to make that concept of expressing what they're doing easier.
I like that framework, and one thing also I recommend is if you're meeting people that are going to introduce you to somebody else, always looking at what does their email introduction say about you and your platform, and is that the way you want to be described, or
Mhm.
did something get lost in the messaging that you need to change for the next time? So,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely using people as sounding boards, and also seeing what that second or third introduction
Mhm.
ends up looking like, and what really resonated with the person you're speaking with.
And it's also important to understand the fact that you will get a lot of feedback, you'll get a lot of advice from people from all walks of life. Most of them might not be coming from a place of true caring or true authenticity. Most of the advice, I think, would come from a place of ego, or trying to show that you know you have the answers and you're just sharing it with you. There are very few people, you are one amongst them, where I would truly know that whatever feedback you give, it comes from a place of authenticity. It comes from a place of being a true well-wisher. There is no sense of ego. There is no sense of trying to prove anything to anyone. And identifying those people and keeping them close, I think, is super valuable as well. Because getting feedback or giving feedback is easy, but getting feedback from the right people is core, uh, really valuable.
Perfect. I think so. Something happened with the mic at the end. It got a little muffled.
Oh, uh,
Oh, that's better.
yeah.
Perfect. All right. Um, Great. And then, so since this is also called "Why Startups Are Hard," what were some of the challenges or roadblocks you went through, and did you ever question that you'd be able to continue building this, and build everything you got to today? Or yeah, tell us about some of the challenges you faced along the way.
To be honest, every day there are situations where I feel, is this going anywhere? What's the point? It's This is getting too hard for me. Am I good enough to continue building what I have? And I have a feeling that a lot of people go through this cycle. Maybe it's not lasting, or maybe it's not, maybe it could be just fleeting, but that does happen at moments in time. And in a way it is good because it pushes you to be better. It pushes you to do things that you may not normally do, but it can also have a very detrimental effect on you, where it could demotivate you, or it could prevent you from continuing to do what you're doing. So one thing that I've learned is that regardless of what happens, you have to keep going, you have to keep grinding, you have to not give up. And so when I speak to a lot of people who sometimes say that I wish I had a startup, or I have this great idea which will definitely make me a billionaire, but I don't have the time, or I have a family to support, or I don't have a co-founder, which is a very common thing that people say. Oh, I wish I had a technical co-founder, or I wish I had a sales co-founder, or whatever it is. Um, and they just give up. And then I kind of ask them, like, why? I mean, it sounds like a great idea. Everyone has time if they really want to. You may or may not have a 9 to 5 job, so you have some kind of financial security. Why aren't you just, giving it a shot? Why aren't you like putting yourself out there, applying for pitch competitions, make a pitch deck? I mean, it takes maybe 2 days to put together at least a basic pitch deck. Not even 2 days. With AI and chat gpt and canva, you can do it in like half an hour if you really want to. Um, and you have all these tools and resources in front of you. Why not? It takes so little time to put any of these items together, and you can apply for pitch competitions. You can start talking to people. The world is your oyster. And in the world of Zoom and LinkedIn, it's never easier to connect to people at scale. So, and I've seen a lot of people being aware of this and still not doing it, because they in their minds think that they're not able or capable to do that. And I feel really sad when people say that, they don't say it, but they kind of express the fact that they're lazy, or they just don't have the willpower to go through with this or even begin it. And that I think is a lost opportunity to a lot of people. And that position that they're in, I'm pretty sure every founder has gone through that at some stage, and they have just managed to grind their way through or overcome that in one way or other, either by convincing themselves or having someone convince them to do that. And that feeling that people have, I feel really bad that they have it. And I hope that they talk to people like you and others in the community who are actively trying to promote entrepreneurship, who are actively encouraging people, regardless of how stupid they think they are or their idea is. It's just taking that one step ahead and just keep going forward, regardless of the thousand excuses that you have. I think is something that you preach through your book and through Prepare for VC, and being the director of Startup Grind Boss and Startup Grind, because it is a grind and it never stops. And I think what you're doing in that regard is fantastic, and I'm sure that you have helped personally many people overcome this block that definitely comes in the beginning, but also after they start their startup as well. But I'm very grateful that you're in a position to do that.
Yeah, it's always amazing, like hearing, especially if you're really passionate about what you're building, you want to see it be successful, and the one thing holding you back is yourself. That's where, we can um yeah, help with resources, experiences, learning from others, helping you find your team. I think that's not the only way to realize some of the dreams as well, in terms of like, if there's something you're truly passionate about and you actually don't see yourself as the founder or CEO, look for other opportunities. See if you can join somebody. There's going to be somebody else with a similar idea and vision out there. And um, founders need co-founders, they need team members, they need uh, people to come in on, part-time mentorship basis. And there's other ways to get involved too, but the more you can get involved with either starting something of your own you're truly passionate about or finding other ways to support other people building in the space, you're going to feel excited, and it's not going to feel like you're spending as many hours as you really are. It's going to feel like I'm doing something I want to do, and I look forward to doing every single day.
And one thing that you mentioned in your book as well, and probably in the cohort, is the aspect of transparency and communication. We had a discussion sometime back, probably on LinkedIn. I think you commented on a post where I said that not sharing your idea with the world because you're afraid someone might steal it is a very misplaced thought that could potentially have more negative impact on you than positive. And that aspect where people are scared, like, oh, they go on stealth mode, or they say that, oh, if someone comes to know of this, they're just gonna steal it and take our customers and go away. If your business is that brittle, then probably you should think of a better idea. But if not, the positive aspects of sharing your idea to the world, seeing what comes back, talking to people, has far more positive connotations than negative. And being transparent, like I try to be as transparent as possible. When I meet people, my employees, my investors know exactly how much my business has in the bank account. They know exactly what the financials are. And I try to be as open with them as possible, and that has surprisingly been very positive for me, because in some situations I share not so great news with my investors, and many times they come back with more support, more help, rather than berating me or adding to the negativity. They have been extremely supportive to me, and that aspect of transparency and communication, I think, is not spoken about a lot outside of this ecosystem, but I'm glad that you bring it up time and time again.
Yeah, I think the worst thing an investor, from the investor's point of view, is hearing everything is going great and then suddenly a startup fails. The scenario where you're getting updates and you're seeing, hey, these aren't the things that aren't working. There's risk in every venture, but if founders are transparent of this isn't working, we're testing, we're keep trying things, we need help. That's where investors can also come in and help support, but they're also not going to be shocked at, the next time you build, like there's plenty of examples where if you've had a really open, honest relationship, the startup didn't work out, but as a founder, you've grown and learned and figured out what's going to work well in your next venture. Investors will follow you to that and want to be a part of the next thing because of how open and honest and transparent you are. So, yeah, a couple, benefits. You get that relationship building, and then you also get support where, um, an investor update shouldn't just be the highlights and the wins. It should be, where do we need support? Do you have anyone in your network that can help with these specific asks? And it doesn't have to be funding related. It can be, we're looking for a new CMO, or we're looking to scale, or we're looking for leads into a specific conference we want to speak at. Is there anybody that any of the investors we're sending an update to can help with that? And you'll be surprised, like how much support you'll get from sharing the things you're looking for. And yeah, the more people know how they can help you, the easier it is to actually help.
Well, very well said, Jason. I think we are coming up towards the end of a conversation. I'm very, very glad to have someone like you in my life. I'm very glad that I'm very honored that I have a direct line to you, and I would encourage anyone in the startup community ecosystem, anyone who seeks help, to reach out to Jason. He is truly a kind man, someone who selflessly helped so many startups that I just cannot begin to imagine someone like him in the ecosystem. I wish there were more people like Jason, but unfortunately there aren't. and I'm very glad to know you. And I hope you have the strength and the motivation to continue doing this, continue helping founders, continue helping people in the ecosystem, and you and your team with Steve and Chris and Yad and everyone who's been at it for years. I mean, I just can't begin to thank you for everything that you're doing.
Oh, I really appreciate it, and I'm inspired by everything you're doing as well. And even yeah, a couple years ago, or maybe a year ago, you sent me a personal note in the mail, and like that really made my day. And I think I shared it on LinkedIn and Instagram and other channels. But the fact that it's you have dozens of clients, partners, mentors you've worked with, and you're still taking the time to write out individual notes and messages and stay in touch on all the exciting updates. It makes me really inspired to continue everything we're doing and help more and more founders become like you.
Oh, that's very kind of you, Jason. Thank you.
No, I enjoyed our great conversation here. I'm happy to connect with anybody that took a listen. We're
Yep.
gonna share and send some clips of this as well out to the audience. And yeah, definitely learn from Akil and his inspiring story and venture. And I'm happy to stay in touch with anybody that wants to connect and see how we can help support from here.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Jason.
Thanks.